about in criminal litigation, there will be burdens of proof lies upon the prosecution, as mentioned under Section 173, regarding of how do they have to prove, in particular, all the ingredient of offences, all ingredient in the offences pertaining to the charge. Okay, so these are very important, in which it is comprises of the onus of proving and also burden of proving, because if you are kalau misal kata you masih ingat lagi, burden of proving berdasarkan kepada Evidence Act, from section 101 until section 114A, it actually spells about the burden of proof. The person who assert must prove. Okay, and for that particular situation, meaning that in criminal justice, the burden actually lies upon the prosecution to prove that the accused, to prove that the accused is actually the alleged accused, the accused who has alleged committing any criminal act. Okay, so the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to fulfill the requirement, to fulfill the requirement for prima facie proof or for beyond reasonable doubt, and this particular requirements as enacted under the Criminal Procedure Code, in order for the prosecution to prove the allegations against the accused person are true. Because you must remember, the law is not about the truth, but it is about the proof. Undang-undang bukan berdasarkan kepada kebenaran, tetapi dia berdasarkan kepada bukti. Bukti yang akan menunjukkan kebenaran. The proof will actually enlighten the truth. So this is also in line with the basic principle, two basic principle, which is first is innocent until proven guilty, and also audi alteram partem. You all akan mengalami, kalau misal kata you all terpilih di antara bintang-bintang yang akan bersinar, akan ditemuduga oleh LPQB pada bulan depan. There will be two types of question that they are going to ask you. First question regarding the provision of law. Second question, they are going to ask you about basic principle and maybe some legal maxim. So legal maxim for CPC, it comprises of, kalau at this particular juncture, two. First is innocent until proven guilty, in which I believe that you know, meaning that every accused person, apabila mereka dituduh di mahkamah, mereka adalah tidak bersalah sehinggalah dibuktikan sebaliknya. Dan pembuktian itu, perkataan proven guilty itu merujuk kepada evidential aspect as well. Dan apakah yang melibatkan audi alteram partem? Audi alteram partem secara ringkasnya adalah berkaitan the right to be heard. The right to be heard. You cannot say that the other parties are guilty up until you hear the evidence, ataupun ini kalau misal kata dalam keadaan meaning that you cannot say, you cannot judge, you cannot misjudge that particular person as guilty, up until that particular person being charged in court, being charged in court with opportunity for him to produce their evidence, meaning that evidences from the prosecution, to say that it is alleged that the accused person has did something or done something wrong, and the opportunity towards the accused person to put forward his defense to rebut such evidence, and at the end of the day, it is the court who will make the decision. So this is a very important part in which the legal maxim. So you must remember these two legal maxim is closely related. Are closely related to the criminal justice system. Right. Regarding the examination of witnesses, I think you have learned this particular topic during your evidence, law of evidence lecture, in which it is comprised under section 135 until section 166 of chapter 10 of the Evidence Act 1950, in which you can see that it is actually for the procedural manner the procedural manner in which it must be followed. It must be followed. In terms of how, in order to how to produce and to examine. To examine the witnesses. That is under section 135. Okay. Then what would be the admissibility of evidence? Okay. You actually have learned about primary evidence, secondary evidence. What is actually the rule of thumb in admitting such evidence? Okay. So apart from that, okay, the word examination in chief, cross examination. Okay. Examination in chief, cross examination. You can refer it under section 137. Okay, 137. Okay, and the order of examination, particularly kalau examination in chief. Okay, examination in chief ini dia berkaitan dengan when the prosecution or when the other party, you need to remember examination in chief is for the other for the parties to establish their case. Okay, in order for the other party for the party to establish their case. Okay, for example, in criminal litigation, the prosecution will start off with their case, and when they start their case, they are going to call witnesses, they are going to tender their evidence, okay, in order for them to establish their case based on the charge sheet. Okay, that is examination in chief. What is cross-examination? Cross-examination is actually the other party will take turn to examine the witnesses, okay, to examine the witnesses to rebut, okay, or to create a doubt, towards that witness on the question that being asked during the examination in chief, okay, right, or to attack or to question the credibility of that particular person. So that is what we call as cross-examination. Okay. Re-examination, in other words, re-examination is actually when the prosecution or when the person who examine during the examination in chief, they are going to strengthen back all the evidence that has been discredited during the cross-examination. Okay, so re-examination, you will have to build back, okay, your facts of the case that has been discredited, okay, that has been questioned, okay, during the cross-examination. So this is very important that you need to know about section 137. Okay, and then there will be some order and direction in terms of re-examination under section 138. And there will be some cross-examination of a person called to produce a document under section 139. There will be some witness in terms of character. If you still remember, I'm not sure whether you have learned about bad character evidence, for example. Okay, can it be considered by the court? Okay, and section 141, leading question. What does it mean by leading question? Leading question meaning that the question that lead to the answers directly. Okay, it can only, leading question can only be posed against the witness during the cross-examination. You need to remember section 141 only applicable during the cross-examination. Leading question meaning that when the answer is only yes or no. When the answer is yes or no, or when you are suggesting the answer in your question. For example, leading question, for example, non-leading question is, what is your name? That is non-leading question. What will be the leading question would be, do you agree that your name is Fatimah binti Abu? Okay, so can you differentiate between that two questions? Meaning that the first question is actually for the other party to explain further without any answer in that particular question. What is your name? How old are you? Are you there during that particular time and at the particular venue? Okay, that is non-leading question. What is leading question? Leading question would be, do you agree that your name is Fatimah binti Abu? Okay, do you agree that in that particular time you were there? Or I put it to you that you are there during that particular time. So that is what we call as a leading question. And leading question, you must remember, can only be asked during cross-examination. Okay, so that is something that you can refer to section 142, when leading question may not be asked. Section 143, evidence when the leading question may be asked and when the leading question may not be asked. Section 142 and section 143. What will be the evidence in terms of writing? Can the court admit any evidence in writing? The answer is yes, what we call as an exhibit. Okay, exhibit. Okay, what is exhibit? We are going to discuss later on. Okay, so you can see here, and whether that particular written evidence, whether that written evidence can be cross-examined. The answer is yes under section 145. What will be the lawful question in cross-examination under section 146? There will be some restriction on evidence at trial for rape cases under section 146A. Okay, and section 147, when witness to be compelled to answer. And this actually comes the terms of privileged evidence or privileged communication. Okay, what is privileged communication? Is a non-compellable question that need to be answered. Meaning that if it is tantamount to privileged evidence, meaning that privileged evidence is actually a privileged communication between solicitors and client, or it is actually a privileged communication between husband and wife, between spouses. Okay, so that particular evidence considered to be a privilege, and it is not something which is compelled to be answered by the witness. Other than that, if let's say the lawyer or prosecution asks you, if you are being selected as a witness, if the question posed to you, that particular question, you need to answer that. Okay, unless if it is a question under section 146A, which is restriction of evidence trial for rape, or if it is something which is something that related to privileged evidence, then you are not compelled to answer. Okay, then you can read under section 148, court to decide the question that shall be asked, or when the witness compelled to answer, and so on and so forth, until you can see under section 166. Even the line of questioning, you need to refer to section, for example, 151. There shouldn't be any indecent or scandalous question. Okay, under section 142, there shouldn't be any question intended to insult or to annoy. Okay, under section 153, exclusion of evidence to contradict answer to question testing veracity. Okay, and this is very important because at the end of the day, what happened if your witness going hostile? Okay, what do you mean by going hostile? Meaning that you call that witness in the first place to prove your case, but instead of that, the witness actually said otherwise, which is totally going to destroy your case. So in that particular situation, you have to impeach the credit of the witness based on section 155, and that's why we have an impeachment proceeding. Impeachment proceeding means that any act, meaning that it is a procedure to discredit your own witness because your witness is going hostile. Okay, right? Then there will be some corroboration evidence, okay, to make sure that relevant facts admissible. Because you need to remember, in terms of evidence, the relevant fact is very important, and that will be under section 156, question tending to corroborate evidence. Okay, so is there any question regarding this matter? Is it clear?
Clear.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. So when it comes to witness examination of witnesses, you have to refer to section 135 until 166, and it is regarding the examination of witnesses and tendering of exhibit, as well as witness examination, and it also states about the roles of the counsel and also the court and the rules of admissibility of evidence. Okay, the rules of admissibility of evidence. Okay, next. Right, okay, next we are going to see regarding the summary trial of witnesses. Yeah, summary trial of witnesses. We have discussed and you already have presented at length, okay, the infographic that relates to the process or procedures for summary trial under section 173, okay. And if you come across, there will be some particular situation which relate to adverse inference. What is adverse inference? Meaning that in calling witnesses, if let's say that the other party failed to call the witnesses, and you discover that the reason for the other party not to call their own witness because of they would like to hide something, or if let's say that they call that witness, okay, meaning that if they call that particular witnesses, that witness will give evidence against them, okay. So that is what we call an adverse inference under section 114G. Then we are going to discuss about the calling of witnesses, the demeanor of witnesses, okay, whether the witnesses can be recalled, okay. Then is there any power of court to call witnesses, okay. Then we are going to discuss about affidavit, okay, affidavit, and also the expert evidence, okay. So in this particular situation, if you have buku Baljit Singh, you can refer to page 413 onwards, page 413 onwards. So I know that you guys referring to this book, so our direction for lecture today will be based on that particular book, but there will be some additional in terms of cases and additional in terms of sections. Right, calling of witnesses. Okay, calling of witnesses, you may see, you may refer to section 134, 135, and section 114G. Okay, 134, if you're referring to section 134. Okay, 134, please refer to section 134. Calling of witnesses, 134. All right, okay. 134, 135, and also 114 of the Evidence Act, and not CPC. So the discretion to call or not to call a witnesses, okay, lies upon the parties. Lies upon the parties. So you can see under section 134, 135, and section 114G. Okay. So if you are referring to your to the book, must every witness from whom a police statement has been recorded to be called to testify? Because why this is you have learned, for example, there will be a first information report. What is first information report? Meaning that the person who lodged a police report regarding to that particular complainant that he have received, okay, or the witness or the relevant witness or the victim himself who actually lodged the police report. So in terms of this, you may see that the discretion to call or not to call will be largely depending on the public prosecutor. Okay, so you can see that must every witness from whom a police statement has been recorded to be called testify. You can look into the first case of Adel Muhammad Al-Dabah, who actually observed that the prosecution has the discretion to call any witness and the court cannot interfere into the matter. The court cannot interfere into that matter. Okay, and in the case of Teh Lee Tong, the court stated that all prosecution witnesses should be brought to the court by the prosecution, and the prosecution may choose which witnesses to give evidence and may choose which witnesses not to be called to give evidence. Okay, but must be brought to the attention of the court and made available to the defense. Okay, this is at the end of the day, if let's say that it is the discretion of the prosecution to inform the court on how many witnesses that they are going to call in, for example, nine witnesses, and if let's say that only 7 witnesses that they may manage to call, they need to inform the court to offer another 2 witnesses, okay, to be offered to the defense. Okay, so that is actually in the case of Teh Li Tong. Okay, in the case of Abdullah Zawawi, the court actually held that um, uh, failure to call upon the prosecution witnesses. Yeah, the court say that the prosecution rights not to call a witnesses must always be guided by its duty to discharge the onus of proof. As I mentioned to you, calling witnesses is very important because it is each witness will serve a purpose why they are going to be called, because to discharge the onus of proof, okay, which is to prove each and element of the each and element of the law or the offences that has been stated in the charge sheet. Okay, so the court say in Abdullah Zawawi, if the failure to call particular witness give rise to a serious gap in the prosecution case, then the prosecution must close this gap by calling the witnesses to explain, and if not, the court will draw the attention or inference, adverse inference under section 114G. Okay, and it is not for the defense to call the offered witness to close the gap. So you need to remember, what does it mean? The onus of proof by the prosecution must be exercised diligently by the prosecution. So if let's say that you involved in any of the mock trial after this and you are the prosecution, you must make sure that how to prove all allegation under the charge sheet, it will be based on calling of witnesses. You have to prove each and every ingredient, okay, of offences in the charge sheet by adducing evidence. And adducing evidence meaning that evidence by the witnesses, okay, by the witnesses, okay. And if you can refer to case Teo Ho Chai, okay, the appellant were charged and found guilty in relation to drug offences and sentenced to death by the learned trial judge. On appeal, there is the issue that the learned judge had erred in law in not concluding that the non-calling of one witness was fatal to the prosecution case, and in not concluding that there was a break in the change of evidence relating to the exhibit. Okay, all right. Before we proceed further with this particular case, you must remember that witnesses must be based on the chain of evidence. You produce witness because at the end of the day, you would like to establish that there was a chain of evidence which is directly involving the accused person. And you must make sure that there is no break in chain of evidence. For example, in drug cases, you must be able to establish that that drug has been seized, okay, has been seized from the accused person. You have properly marked that particular evidence. There is a senarai bongkar ataupun seizure and search list. Okay, that particular list actually being signed by the police, okay, oleh oleh pihak polis dengan disaksikan oleh OKT. Okay, that particular drug must be the same drug that you seize or you get it from the tempat kejadian until you bring it to the police balai polis, okay, untuk disimpan. Dan kemudian inilah juga dadah yang sama you hantar kepada chemist for a chemist report. Dialah juga dadah yang sama daripada chemist report pergi kepada pihak polis, dan dialah juga dadah yang sama yang akan dibuktikan ketika di mahkamah. So this is what we call as a chain of evidence. You cannot, you must prove that the drug is the same drug that has been seized from tempat kejadian up until the chemist report, and this is the same drug yang telah pun yang dikemukakan di mahkamah. Because why? This is very important. how to make sure that is the same exhibit ataupun barang bukti yang sama you dapat daripada tempat kejadian ke balai polis, ke Jabatan Kimia, sehinggalah itulah juga merupakan the same proof ataupun the same exhibit yang dihantar kepada pihak mahkamah, yang dikemukakan di mahkamah adalah by having a proper, clear and concise marking. Okay, mark. Okay, tanda. Penandaan itu sangat penting. Because why? We have a lot of cases. Apabila dadah itu dijumpai di tempat kejadian, dia ditanda sebagai X. Ditanda sebagai X. Apabila polis dapat dan rampas, hantar kepada kemis, kemis terima sebagai X. Masih lagi X, maksudnya barang itu adalah barang kes yang sama. Tetapi apabila pihak kemis, dia keluarkan laporan kimia berkaitan dengan dadah yang telah pun diuji kaji makmal tersebut untuk mengesahkan dadah itu jenis apa dan berat dia berapa. This is very important sebab dia akan menentukan sama ada seseorang itu akan didakwa di bawah Section 39B dan akhirnya jika bersalah dihukum gantung ataupun bukan Section 39B. Dia bergantung kepada berat dadah tersebut. Kalau kemis, dia mengeluarkan laporan, secara tiba-tiba laporan tersebut adalah X1 ataupun bukan X, dia B. Okay. Pernah berlaku bila dihantar kepada kemis, barang itu ditanda sebagai X. Apabila kemis pulang balik, dia beri report, dia kata dia terima exhibit ini yang ditanda sebagai B, bukan X. Dan you kemukakan di mahkamah. There is actually a gross break of chain of evidence. A gross break of chains of evidence, dan ini sebenarnya membuatkan no prima facie evidence established by the prosecution. Okay, so ini yang nak dinyatakan dalam kes Teo Ho Chai, yang mana appellant were charged and found guilty in relation to drug offences and sentenced to death by the learned trial judge. On appeal, they raised the issue that the learned judge erred in law in not concluding that non-calling of one witness was fatal and in not concluding that there was a break in the chain of evidence relating to the exhibit. So the judge held bahawa the fundamental matter in this particular issue in the case is not whether there was a failure to call or not to call, but whether the failure to call a particular witness gave rise to a serious gap in the prosecution. Serious gap maksudnya adanya break in chain of evidence. Itu maksudnya serious gap. Okay, itu maksudnya serious gap. Okay, so dan hakim mengatakan bahawa keputusan memanggil ataupun tak memanggil saksi tersebut hendaklah berdasarkan kepada a duty by the prosecution to ensure whether that particular case has been proven, okay, or need to be proved at the stage of prima facie or beyond reasonable doubt, okay. And the chain of evidence, there must be no break in the chain of evidence, okay. There must be no break in chain of evidence, okay. And this will include the identity and also the identity of exhibit, okay. There must be no doubt in terms of identity of exhibit, and there must be no failure to adduce evidence to provide necessarily to link in the chain of evidence. If not, this would fatal the prosecution case, okay, in this particular situation. Okay, so by failure of calling witnesses had caused a serious break. Dia macam ini, sama ada kegagalan memanggil saksi ataupun tidak. Kalau tak panggil saksi, tak semestinya kes itu akan fatal. Tak semestinya pembuktian itu tidak ada. But if you fail to call that witness and it caused a serious gap. Contoh, saya nak bagi you all satu senario. Contoh apabila you dalam kes melibatkan dadah. Saksi mana yang you rasa you perlu? Saksi mana yang you rasa you perlu panggil? Okay, saksi mana yang you rasa you perlu panggil? Sudah semestinya satu adalah pengadu. First information report, pengadu ataupun saksi ataupun victim. Sebab itulah soalannya adalah sama ada, adakah saksi yang dipanggil itu perlu saksi yang terikat dengan saksi yang telah pun merakamkan keterangan di bawah Section 112 ataupun 113. Okay, jawapannya adalah not necessarily. You boleh tengok dalam beberapa kes, dia kata the most important part is not whether that particular witness has been recorded his statement. Maksudnya dia tak semestinya witness tu adalah seseorang yang telah pun merakamkan keterangan. Okay, the important part adalah you call that particular witness to ensure that there will be no break in term of chain of evidence. So perkara ini adalah perkara yang sangat penting yang ditekankan berdasarkan kepada kes-kes yang dinyatakan ini. Alright. Kalau you gagal memanggil saksi tersebut, then barulah section 114G will be invoked. Will be invoked against the prosecution. Adverse inference. Maksudnya, oh, you tak panggil dia because you know kalau you panggil dia, dia akan memberikan kelebihan kepada pihak satu lagi. Alright, cuba you tengok kes T. Chui Hiang 11.234. The police laid a trap and arrested the accused by using a police informer who acted as a heroin buyer. Ini dalam evidence kita panggil entrapment ataupun kita panggil sebagai witness witness yang cuba yang berlakon maksudnya polis ni dia akan mewujudkan seorang konon-konon dia adalah pembeli kepada dadah tersebut tetapi sebenarnya dia adalah untuk entice ataupun untuk menangkap dengan tujuan menangkap OKT. Okay, so ini dipanggil sebagai agent provocator. Okay, agent provocator. Adakah agent provocator ni sah ataupun tidak? You boleh itu dibincangkan dalam evidence dalam subject evidence. Tapi dalam kes ini tak kira lah you buat agent provocator ataupun tidak. The most important part adalah berdasarkan kepada kes T. Chui Hiang. The accused appealed against the death sentence on the ground that the trial judge had failed to invoke 114G because the police informer has not been called. Okay, the informer has not been called. Okay, for failing to call the informer who acted as an agent provocator. The accused say that he was an innocent carrier of heroin, and on appeal it was argued for the appellant and upheld by the federal court through the judgment of this particular judge that the informer was not only an informer but was an agent of provocator, and the failure to call him had occasioned a serious miscarriage of justice. Sebab although the prosecution has discretion to call any witness, it has the duty to call the material witness to establish its case beyond reasonable doubt. Otherwise, the accused must be acquitted. So there is actually a serious gap in the informer's testimony, without informer's testimony, and the informer had lost his protection under Section 41 of the Dangerous Act as he acted as an agent provocator. Okay, because dalam kes T. Chu Hiang, mahkamah mengatakan bahawa sebab perayu mengatakan bahawa dia bukan orang yang mengedar dadah, dia hanya membawa sahaja. Sebab kalau kita dapat lihat jenayah-jenayah di Malaysia dilakukan oleh orang yang pandai. Okay, kalau nak share dengan you all pernah satu kali saya menghadiri satu ceramah pegawai penjara ni mengatakan bahawa mereka sebenarnya mengendalikan suatu institusi penjara yang mana di dalamnya adalah bukan orang-orang yang tidak pandai tetapi orang-orang yang genius dan brilliant. Dia lagi genius daripada permata genius, permata pintar. Dan you boleh tengok siapa yang ditahan iaitu mereka-mereka yang melakukan kesalahan yang sangat cilik dan pintar. Ini bermakna kalau misal kata dalam kes dadah adalah you kena pastikan dadah tersebut adalah di dalam milik kad, exclusive possession. Okay, tetapi akan ada pihak mengatakan bahawa look, saya tidak memiliki dadah tersebut tetapi saya hanya tukang hantar saja, saya pun tak tahu tu dadah. Okay, so the knowledge is actually very important. Dan kalau kita dapat lihat kes T. Chu Hiang was applied in the High Court case of PP versus Fu Kim Lai, where the failure to call particular witness agent provocator, it would mean that the court would be accepting conflicting evidence without calling that witness to explain or be cross-examined and would cause a miscarriage of justice. This is very important because why? Each and every witnesses bila dipanggil untuk memberikan keterangan, there will be an opportunity for the other party, which is for the defense, okay, untuk cross-examine in terms of the veracity, in terms of capability, in terms of the authenticity of that particular evidence that has been produced by that particular witness. Sebab itu dalam konsep audi alteram partem, dia bermaksud bahawa you must give opportunity for the defense, okay, in order for him to prepare for his defense, to forward his defense, and to ensure that he will got an opportunity to cross-examine the other witnesses by the prosecution, so that the prosecution will not adduce any witnesses which is irrelevant, okay, in terms of this is very important in evidence, to prevent any miscarriage of justice by the concoction of evidence, okay, untuk memastikan bahawa adanya keadilan, okay, adanya keadilan kepada OKT tersebut dengan cara apa? Dengan cara bahawa saksi tersebut diuji akan keterangannya sebagai keterangan yang sahih dan dibuktikan benar. Okay, dibuktikan benar, ya. Dan tidak ada keterangan yang diada-adakan. Okay, concoction of evidence meaning that keterangan tersebut diada-ada, dibuat-buat, sengaja diwujudkan bagi tujuan memastikan OKT itu didapati bersalah. Dan ini adalah isu yang paling besar dalam kes Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. In the case of Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Sebab salah satu isunya adalah ada keterangan saksi tersebut, saksi itu tidak sepatutnya dipanggil. Saksi itu sepatutnya dipanggil ataupun tidak sepatutnya dipanggil. Oleh kerana kalau dia tak dipanggil, maka sebenarnya prosecution tersebut kalau tak dipanggil itu bermakna prosecution cuba try to hide something. Ataupun kalau prosecution panggil dia, whether that piece of evidence is truly an evidence that need to be accepted. So admissibility evidence will come into picture. Alright? Boleh? Ada soalan? Ada apa-apa soalan berkaitan calling witnesses?
Tak ada, belum lagi kot.
Belum lagi. Alright, kita pergi kepada next. Demeanor of witnesses. Demeanor ni maksudnya tingkah laku. Tingkah laku saksi-saksi. Dan you boleh tengok kepada section 271 which provide that the presiding judge in recording the evidence of witnesses may at the conclusion of such evidence and at the foot of the notes record such remarks, if any, as he thinks material respecting the demeanor of such witnesses while under examination. Okay, apa maksud demeanor ni adalah tingkah laku saksi semasa beliau menjawab soalan tersebut, iaitu yang dapat dilihat, ya, yang dapat dilihat secara kata orang outward appearance or behavior such as facial expression, okay, tone of voice, gesture and hesitation or readiness to answer question. Okay, this has been decided in this actually referring into Black Laws Dictionary. Demeanor ni maksudnya tingkah laku. Kadang-kala sebab itu, ya, kadang-kala in terms of arts of being a good litigator, dia tidak terdapat di dalam buku, tetapi dia terdapat berdasarkan kepada pengalaman. You boleh lihat riak wajah seseorang tersebut daripada cara dia bercakap, okay, cara dia menjawab soalan. Adakah dia menjawab soalan tersebut secara lancar ataupun menjawab soalan tersebut secara kata orang tergagap-gagap, okay? Ataupun you can see whether in that particular situation when he answer the question, dia tidak tengok kepada hakim ataupun dia tengok bawah, ataupun dia tengok atas. He try to avoid any direct eye contact, whether with the prosecution or whether with the judge. Ada. Ataupun you lihat daripada dia punya facial expression, kening dia terangkat ke macam Ziana Zain ke, ataupun dengan cara bahawa beliau selalu ada mengatakan bahawa when you say something while you are touching your nose, it means you are lying. Ada yang kata demikian. Ada yang kata bahawa okay, if you say something while you are always touching your nose, okay, meaning that you are lying. You try to create a story. Ataupun when you say something while secara tangan berpeluk tubuh, ya. Tangan berpeluk tubuh tu, itu bermakna you are very secretive, you are not open, you are very defensive. Okay, you are very defensive. Okay, you are not open for any other suggestion, for example. Okay, in terms of kata orang facial expression. Kalau misal kata apabila soalan itu dikemukakan, tiba-tiba kening you berkerut, for example. Okay, meaning that it's either you disagree with that particular question ataupun you merasakan that is the first time, you don't know actually. You don't even know what actually happened, tapi when the question put to you, you feel that that is not the right question that to be asked to you. Memang ada keadaan tersebut, ya, di mana dia sangat tidak berpuas hati semasa cross examination. Okay, yang mana pada cross examination lawyer tu akan kata, I put it to you, you are the one who doing it, you are the one who you adalah pihak yang telah merompak ataupun you lah sebenarnya berniat jahat untuk membunuh seseorang. Okay, I put it to you, I put it to you. Memang dalam kadang-kadang ketika saya kat mahkamah dulu, kadang-kadang saya memang boring ataupun bosan juga, bila lawyer ni dia tak ada soalan lain, itulah soalan dia. I put it to you that you are the one who doing it. I put it to you, you are the one who berpakat sebagai contoh untuk melakukan penipuan. Okay, so di samping I put it to you, ada juga mengatakan bahawa I would like to suggest that you actually have a bad intention. So you agree or not? So jawapannya cuma agree ataupun tidak. Dan you punya jawapan adalah you tak nak agree ataupun you rasa you nak explain. Okay, so you tak berpuas hati sebab lawyer tu kata you just answer whether it is yes or no. Okay, so you kena jawab sama ada yes or no. You tak boleh explain. So pada masa bila you boleh explain adalah pada masa re-examination. Sebab itu kalau you jadi salah seorang counsel ataupun prosecution, you must make sure all question during the examination, chief examination and cross examination, you must make sure that all cross examination question perlu ditanya semula pada masa re-examination if it is relevant. Contoh, you nampak witness you sebenarnya dia nak explain something tapi tak dibenarkan pada masa cross examination. Tanyalah semula pada masa re-examination. Okay, tanya semula. Sebagai contoh, okay, tadi puan tidak bersetuju. Semasa ditanya pada masa peringkat pemeriksaan balas, puan tidak bersetuju bahawa puan adalah pihak yang bertanggungjawab bersubahat melakukan penipuan tersebut. Bolehkah puan terangkan kepada mahkamah sebenarnya apa yang puan ingin nyatakan tadi? Tanya semula kepada saksi sebab saksi ingin menjawab. Okay, dalam kebanyakan kes, kalau soalan itu tidak ditanya, saksi tidak boleh memberikan jawapan. Itu benda paling penting sekali. So we have a problem in terms of you call the expert witness. Contoh, you panggil doktor untuk certify kecederaan yang dialami oleh mangsa. Mangsa telah di sexually abused, for example. Then you need to prove that the such wrongful abuse was committed by the OKT. Dengan cara apa? Memanggil saksi. Saksi terbahagi kepada dua. Saksi yang nampak. Saksi yang nampak, okay, dan juga saksi expert witness ataupun saksi pakar. Soalan kepada saksi yang nampak dengan saksi pakar ni tak sama, berbeza. Sebab saksi pakar akan memberikan soalan dia secara saintifik berdasarkan kepada laporan perubatan dia. Saksi yang nampak ni sekadar nampak, contohlah saksi yang nampak ni kemungkinan besar mak ataupun ibu kepada mangsa tersebut. Anak saya mengadu kepada saya, dia telah sexually abused ataupun dia telah dicederakan secara seksual. Dan saya pun tanya kepada anak saya, apa sebenarnya yang telah berlaku? Dan dia tunjuk kepada saya alat sulit dia sebagai contoh. Soalan berkaitan dengan orang yang nampak, saksi yang nampak dan saksi pakar adalah berbeza. So apa yang sebenarnya yang nak dinyatakan? Okey, dan kemudian pada masa cross examination, peguam daripada pihak akuti akan mengatakan bahawa sebenarnya puan tidak tahu apa yang puan nampak. Sebenarnya puan mengada-ngadakan cerita sebab perkara tersebut tidak berlaku. Dan ataupun puan boleh bagi tahu kepada saya, apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan seksual punya, apakah penderaan seksual? Okay. Soalan-soalan jenis ini akan membuatkan saksi pihak pendakwaan akan secara tidak berpuas hati, sudah semestinya tidak berpuas hati. They are not going to satisfy and they are going to they are going to try to answer the question based on what that she or he knows the best berkaitan dengan anak dia. Dan dalam cross examination, sudah semestinya lah peguam pihak OKT tidak akan memberikan kesempatan kepada saksi-saksi pihak pendakwaan untuk mengemukakan their version. Dan kalau perkara ini penting, ya, perkara ini sangat penting, especially apa sebenarnya yang mak dia nampak, apa sebenarnya yang saksi tersebut nampak, bahawa dia nampak that particular guy adalah OKT itu memegang parang atau pistol, dialah sebenarnya yang menghayunkan parang itu sehingga mencederakan OKT, dan dialah sebenarnya yang menembak OKT. Saksi ini sangat penting sebab you remember apa maksud evidence? Do you guys remember apa maksud evidence? Berdasarkan kepada Evidence Act? Siapa ingat? Apakah itu keterangan? Guys, are you with me? Apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan keterangan? Apakah itu evidence? Who can answer my question? What is evidence? You belajar ni pasal evidence. What is evidence?
All statements.
All statement kurang tepat.
Section 2.
Section 2 cakap apa? Apa itu evidence?
Evidence includes all statements, all documents.
Okay, apart from that, dia adalah facts in issue that has been perceived by your senses. Okay, they are
Betul.
facts in issue that you perceive with your senses. Daripada mata yang memandang, daripada telinga yang mendengar, daripada hidung yang menghidu. Okay, so inilah yang dikatakan sebagai evidence. You dengar apa orang tu cakap, you tak nampak. Itu dikira sebagai keterangan. Sebab you dengar secara langsung. Dan itu yang akan membezakan di antara keterangan direct evidence dengan hearsay evidence.
Yes.
Yes. Hearsay adalah you tak dengar secara langsung. You dengar daripada orang lain. Oh, saya dengar daripada si Tijah tu bahawa dia nampak si M tu sebenarnya yang melakukan. So you dengar daripada pihak lain. Okay. So demeanor of witness is very important in terms of what? In terms of you kena memastikan bahawa saksi tersebut adalah saksi yang memberikan keterangan secara langsung di mahkamah. Okey, dan ini yang you akan boleh lihat dalam section 271 dan kes-kes yang dibincangkan ya di dalam buku tersebut ya. Okey, recall of witnesses. Memanggil semua saksi-saksi. Boleh ke tak boleh? Jawapannya boleh. Issues here involve a fresh or new witnesses. If it is a fresh or new witnesses, it means that, kejap ya. If it is fresh, okay, fresh witnesses, it means that it will be involving a fresh evidence. Okay, a fresh evidence. And whether it can be allowed, okay, whether it is allowable. Okay, witness who has testified earlier but has to be recalled for further testimony. Yes, they can. You can look into relevant section of section 173J and section 173L. Recall by the accused person. Okay, recall of witnesses can be by the accused person, by the prosecution. Kalau prosecution rasa dia tak boleh, then dia boleh minta mahkamah untuk memanggil saksi-saksi tersebut. Okay, so section 162 CPC empowers court to allow prosecutor or accused person to re-summon or to recall a witness after charge is amended. This is also very important because after the amendment of the charge, you need to read back the charge to the accused person. If the accused person tidak mengaku salah, you kena make sure bahawa you kena panggil saksi, okay, because it involves a new and a fresh evidence based on the charge, amended charge. Okay. But whether you can recall the witnesses during the prosecution stage. Okay, section 173C and D are silent on recall during prosecution stage. But in practice, it can be allowed if it is served the purpose of interest of justice. Okay. Maksudnya prosecution dah panggil saksi ketujuh. Tiba-tiba prosecution kata, oh saya nak panggil balik saksi pertama atau kedua. Sebab ada keterangan baru. So kalau nak diikutkan, boleh ke tak boleh? Ya? Tidak dinyatakan dalam section 173C ataupun D. Tetapi if it serve the interest of justice, yes. You can do so. Okay. Then you can refer to other provision of section 4174 of CPC. Okay. 4174 of CPC. Section 4174 adalah berkaitan dengan apa? Dia berkaitan dengan apa? The court to which a case is transferred under this section may act on the evidence already recorded in the trial, partly so recorded, okay? Ataupun resummon the witnesses. Okay, dalam kes jika terdapatnya transfer of criminal cases, okay? Kes itu dipindahkan daripada mahkamah rendah kepada mahkamah atasan ataupun dipindahkan daripada satu mahkamah kepada mahkamah yang lain. Boleh ataupun tak boleh? Jawapannya, in order to clarify the evidence that had been tendered before or that already been recorded, okay, maka the court may resummon the witnesses, okay, ataupun recommence the trial. Okay, that is under section 417. Okay, tengok juga section 425. Section 425 Section 425 adalah section berkaitan dengan power of court to summon and to examine person. Okay, court juga boleh panggil semula saksi-saksi berdasarkan kepada section 425. Okay, recall of witnesses. Okay, next kita akan lihat power of court to call witnesses. That is section 425 CPC. Kalau you baca section 425 CPC, it is divided into two parts. It is divided into two parts. The first part, okay, confers trial judge discretionary power to summon any person as witness, examine any person in attendance though not summoned, ataupun recall and examine any person already examined. First part, dia bagi kuasa budi bicara kepada hakim untuk memanggil saksi-saksi ataupun memeriksa saksi-saksi yang hadir walaupun tidak disaman untuk hadir, ataupun untuk memanggil semula ataupun untuk memeriksa saksi-saksi yang telah pun diperiksa. Okay. And the second part of section 425 to impose mandatory obligation on the part of trial judge. Trial judge ni ada mandatory obligation for him to summon any person if it is appear that the evidence is essential to the just decision of the case. Okay. If it is appear that it is essential, if that evidence is essential to the just decision of the case, then it is obligatory. Maknanya wajib untuk hakim tersebut memanggil semula saksi-saksi untuk diperiksa semula. Okay. So, can the judge admit fresh evidence? Yes, the answer is yes. In dalam kes Ramli bin Kecik versus PP. That case was decided by the Supreme Court. Okay. Jawapan dia boleh di dalam kes Ramli bin Kecik, ya. Okay. And kalau you dapat lihat at any stage of any inquiry, trial or other proceeding, ini bermakna saksi-saksi boleh dipanggil semula even after close of prosecution case, but before judgment lah. Okay, this is based on the case of Lok Poh Siang versus PP. Okay, and can boleh tak saksi itu dipanggil semula selepas defense close case dia? Jawapannya boleh berdasarkan kepada kes Syahrullah Abdul Rakib versus PP 2011 yang mana diputuskan oleh Mahkamah Rayuan. Okay. However, recall of witnesses not to fill the loophole. This is very important. The power to recall witness bukan untuk menutup kelemahan kes pendakwaan ataupun bukan untuk menutup kelemahan kes OKT. Tetapi selalunya recall of witnesses ini berlaku jika ada fresh evidence ataupun to clarify certain evidence which has been adduced by the witnesses that came later. Okay, maksudnya saksi itu saksi keempat. Dia bagi tahu sesuatu yang mana ia agak bercanggah dengan apa yang dinyatakan oleh saksi pertama. You dah panggil saksi pertama ni tadi. Okay, maknanya to clarify the matter. Betul ke saksi pertama ni cakap sebagaimana apa yang dinyatakan oleh saksi kedua ataupun keempat ini? So you need to recall back saksi pertama. However, this is something which is optional. Sebab itu section 425 ni, dia ada dua part. Satu adalah kuasa budi bicara. Yang kedua, dia jadi kuasa tak budi bicara. Wajib panggil kalau misal kata it is very essential. Terlalu penting untuk memastikan bahawa keputusan itu keputusan yang adil dan saksama berdasarkan kepada OKT. And it is not to fill in loophole. Dalam kes PP versus Kang Ho Soh 1992. Okay, kes 1992. Okay, rujuk juga section 256. If the court dia panggil saksi-saksi, court ada tak kuasa untuk menyoal saksi-saksi? Yes, under section 256, the court may question, okay, may pose question to accused. And this is the same section sebagaimana section 165 Akta Keterangan. Okay, it is the same section sebagaimana section 165 of the Evidence Act. Okay, this is power to recall witness. Affidavit evidence. Selalu you dengar affidavit evidence ini adalah berdasarkan kepada kes-kes civil. Ada atau tidak affidavit evidence dalam kes-kes melibatkan kriminal? Jawapannya ada. Boleh tengok section 424 of CPC, which is apakah dimaksudkan dengan affidavit. Affidavit adalah a statement or a declaration in writing on oath or affirmation before a person having authority to administer an oath or affirmation. Okay, this can be seen under section 424. Sila tengok dan baca section 424. And the major ataupun the landmark case bagi affidavit evidence adalah kes Kun Recon Holding Sdn Bhd. Okay, Kun Recon Holding Sdn Bhd. Okay, this is the important yang menyatakan bahawa affidavit can be admitted in criminal trial. Okay. However, you can see that dalam section 424 adanya requirement berkaitan affidavit tersebut perlulah kata orang need to be affirmed. Okay. Or the oath need to be administered by a list of person under that section 424. Okay. So dalam kes ini adalah berkaitan kes Kun Recon ni, the respective applicant sought to admit certain affidavit which they had sworn before the Commissioner for Oaths. So public prosecutor raised a preliminary objection that the affidavit sworn did not comply with section 424. So in this particular situation, the court held that section 424 is an enabling provision under which an affidavit which is sworn in the Federation before any magistrate or registrar may be used in criminal court. It is not intended to be overriding, overpowering or a dominant provision, but it is specifically enacted to make it subject to any rules of court. Jadi dia tidak menyatakan bahawa dia adalah boleh ataupun tidak, ya. Boleh ataupun tidak sesuatu affidavit itu sworn before a commissioner for oath. Okay, sebab kalau you lihat berdasarkan kepada section 424, ini juga satu benda yang penting ya untuk you ingat ya. Section 424, kalau you lihat kepada section 424, di dalam itu tidak dinyatakan commissioner for oath. Dan walaupun konsep affidavit ini adalah konsep yang sama sebagaimana konsep dalam civil litigation, sebab dia adalah statement ataupun declaration in writing under oath or affirmation, but it must be before, maksudnya di hadapan person having authority to administer that particular oath or affirmation as provided under section 424 and as it is a rule under the CPC for any affidavit evidence that relates to criminal litigation. So ini dinyatakan jelas dalam kes Kun Rekon Holding Sendirian Berhad. Okay? Boleh? So which mean affidavit ni boleh ke tak boleh dalam evidence? Kalau dalam civil memang boleh lah. Dalam criminal pun boleh. Tetapi dalam civil normally affidavit ini the oath been administered before the Commissioner of Oaths. Commissioner for Oaths dia tak sama dalam konsep criminal. Okay. Now we move on into expert evidence. Expert evidence ni adalah saya bagi tahu tadi, dia merujuk kepada expert testimony. Expert testimony given by the expert. Maksudnya keterangan pakar yang diberikan oleh pakar. Okay. So apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan pakar? Apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan expert? Maksud expert ada di dalam Evidence Act. Okay. Dia berdasarkan kepada sama ada pengalaman ataupun dia berdasarkan kepada qualification ataupun dia berdasarkan kepada whether that particular person are experienced, having experience based on their experience or qualification. Okay. Itu yang dimaksudkan dengan expert. Okay. And the admissibility of expert evidence kena rujuk kepada section 399. This is very important. Kalau you dapat mock case yang berkaitan dengan kes dadah ataupun kes bunuh, of course you nak panggil forensik. Kan? Of course you nak panggil forensik. So forensik ni normally you have to actually bawa masuk report by the expert. Report by the expert. Dan selalu soalan popular adalah, boleh ke kalau misal kata kita tender report tersebut without the maker of that particular report? Boleh ke tak boleh? Adakah expert ini wajib datang ke mahkamah untuk memberikan keterangan? Ataupun report dia sahaja yang boleh dibawa masuk? Okey. Ini adalah jawapan-jawapan yang mana kalau saya jawab boleh atau tak boleh nak tender report dia sebab nak tender medical report. Nak tender medical report, jawapan ni boleh ke tak boleh tanpa melalui the maker, jawapannya boleh. Maksudnya medical report itu ditender kepada investigation IO, investigation officer. Jawapannya boleh. Okay. Tapi apakah status expert report ini? Apakah status expert report ini? Status expert report adalah corroborative evidence. Contoh dalam kes-kes melibatkan kes sexual offences, jenayah seksual. Okay. Expert evidence adalah corroborative evidence. Maksudnya dia untuk support, dia to corroborate the evidence bahawa accused person the one who can be linked or related to that particular alleged rape offence, for example. Whether you need or not to call, okay? Whether you need to not a call, you need to call the doctor. You need to call the doctor to explain their expert evidence report. You kena panggil doktor untuk explain sebab expert report is just corroborative evidence. The most important part adalah it must be tendered by the expert himself. Okay. Dan dia ada prosedur dia di bawah section 399. Sebagai contoh, you kena bagi masa 3 clear day. Okay. Ada tempoh masa tertentu untuk laporan tersebut dikemukakan. Any document purporting to be a report under the hand of any expert mentioned under subsection 2. Okay, ini section 3991 Matter of thing examined or analysed by him or any document purporting to be the report under the hand of registrar of criminal relating to finger impression submitted to him for report may be given in evidence in any trial. Okay, unless that person or registrar shall be required to attend as a witness by the court or by the accused person, okay, that shall give notice to the public prosecutor not less than 3 clear days before commencement of trial. Okay, the following are persons to whom the provision of this section apply: officers of Institute Medical Research, government medical officer, chemist, person appointed by minister by notification of gazette to be a document examiner. Document examiner ni adalah daripada Jabatan Kimia, dia mestilah mendapat tauliah dan digazetkan sebagai pakar dokumen. Okay, dia sangat penting dia boleh menentukan sama ada sign itu merupakan sign yang tulen ataupun tidak dalam sesuatu dokumen, ataupun setiap nombor pada cek itu adakah nombor itu nombor yang dipalsukan. Okay, kemudian inspector of weigh and measure appointed under such written law, or any person or class of person to whom the minister by notification gazette declare that the provision of this section shall be applied. And the person referred to, okay, the expert person referred to and the register of criminal under by this code bound to state the truth in the report made under their hand. Okay, so this is very important, This is very important. Oh, the most important part adalah, sila tengok subsection 1, proviso, provided always that in any case in which the public prosecutor intend to give in evidence any such report, he shall deliver the copy to the accused person not less than 10 clear days before the commencement of the trial. This is very important. You must give the report to the accused person 10 clear days, minimum 10 clear days before the commencement of the trial. Okay, the report must be given. So this is very important. Okay, this is very important under section 399. So you can see there are some cases that actually discuss, that actually discuss. So dalam buku tu you boleh tengok, alternatively, if prosecution intend to tender to the court any of such report, provided that accused does not require the maker to attend, a copy of the report must be given to the accused person. Contohnya, kalau misal kata you rasakan bahawa the prosecution do not want to call their expert, dia nak tender the report only. So the report must be served towards the accused person not less than 10 clear days before the trial. Okay, but in the event that the court wishes the expert witness to come to the court may request without giving notice, and it should adjourn the case for the prosecution to produce the expert witness. If the expert witness come to court, he must give oral testimony and cannot submit the report, but he may refer to refresh his memory, as was decided in the case of So Tian Teck versus R. This is very important. Very important. Bila bila katalah you ada mock trial dan you ada saksi. Memang betul. Saksi-saksi tu you prepare dengan memberikan diorang, you buat diorang punya Q&A. Okay. Tetapi pada masa mock trial nanti, you must make sure that your witness tak akan baca daripada skrip. Okay. They are not scripted. Their evidence cannot be scripted. Okay. This is very important. Their evidence cannot be scripted. You must make sure they memorize the script. Okay. Jadi isu adalah boleh ataupun tidak. For example, if the expert terlupa laporan yang dia kemukakan, boleh tak dia refer kepada report dia? Jawapannya boleh, tapi dengan alasan to refresh his memory. In the case of So Tian Teck. Okay, in the case of So Tian Teck. Okay, in case Muhammad bin Abdul Rahman versus PP. Muhammad Abdul Rahman versus PP. The accused had given a notice to the prosecution for the chemist to appear at the trial. At the trial, the prosecution did not call the chemist as a witness, but tendered his report as evidence without any objection from the accused person. The judge held that section 399 of CPC, if the accused give a proper notice or the court requests the presence of the maker of the report, the prosecution must call the maker. However, on the facts of this case, the accused was taken as having waived his right when he did not object to the absence of the chemist. So, katalah you sebagai pihak pembelaan, kalau you dapat tahu bahawa seseorang saksi itu telah disaman untuk hadir ke mahkamah memberikan keterangan, tetapi saksi tersebut tidak memberikan keterangan. Okay, berdasarkan kepada kes Muhammad bin Abdul Rahman, you must object. Because if you did not object, you are deemed to waive your right for the absence of that particular witness. Okay, this is very important. Okay, you must object provided that section 399 has been fulfilled with. Maksudnya adanya notis 10 clear days bahawa saksi tersebut akan hadir tetapi dia tidak dipanggil. Okay, boleh? Alright. However, dia ada satu lagi kes ya. Kes Cha Siu Kok ya. Dalam kes ini hakim ni mengatakan bahawa at the trial, the prosecution did not call the chemist but submitted the report without any objection from the accused person. Accused person only objected during the defense case, but the objection was overruled. Okay, so mahkamah mengatakan bahawa it is immaterial. Maksudnya tak penting sama ada accused remain silent ataupun did not object the absence of the maker. Okay, kalau misal kata ada notis supaya maker to appear tetapi maker tersebut tidak appear, maka the report should be inadmissible. Okay, ini yang saya katakan bahawa report bersecara bertulis daripada keterangan saksi pakar boleh dikemukakan tanpa memanggil the maker of that report, provided maksudnya dalam keadaan jika tidak ada notis untuk memanggil the maker to give evidence in court. Itu nombor satu. Nombor dua, that particular report must be given to the accused person 10 clear days before the commencement of the trial. Kalau kedua-dua perkara ini tidak dipenuhi, the expert evidence punya report will be inadmissible. Inadmissible, it doesn't matter whether the accused person had objected or not. Okay, so for prosecution, kalau ada team prosecutor ke, nanti you join mana-mana prosecution punya team ya, you must make sure this is, sebagai strategi kalau you rasa you nak panggil maker, must give 10 clear days notice. Maker will come and maker will give their testimony. Okay, dan accused person punya counsel pun kena make sure yang you all sentiasa bersedia. Katalah ada notis untuk memanggil maker tetapi maker tidak dipanggil. Okay, you kena alert dan you kena object. Dan kalau dalam kes melibatkan Cha Siu Kok, it doesn't matter you object or not. Saya suka kalau jadi peguam kepada OKT sebab kerja saya hanya diam sahaja. Serius. Jadi OKT punya counsel memang best. Hanya diam sahaja menunggu any break in chain of evidence. Hanya menunggu pihak prosecution tidak mengemukakan apa-apa keterangan berkaitan. Saya sangat suka. Sebab tu kalau saya jadi lawyer dulu, saya jadi lawyer for accused person. Kadang-kadang pendakwa raya dia macam berasa marah. Dia berasa marah. Sebab apa ya? Ini benda yang penting ya. Kalau you nampak prosecution punya soalan itu tidak relevan ataupun prosecution tak tanya soalan itu padahal soalan itu penting untuk kertas pertuduhan tersebut. Okay, you jangan sibuk-sibuk untuk tanya soalan tu bagi pihak prosecution. You elok diam je. Bila you diam, nanti at the end of the day, you akan buat submission dan mengatakan bahawa prosecution had failed to exercise their duty. Exercise their duty because the onus of proving are on them and they fail. Sebab you hanya diam saja. Okay? Inilah sebenarnya yang paling penting ya. Tapi untuk tujuan taklah bermakna you tak tanya apa-apa soalan pun. Kalau you rasa soalan tu soalan yang penting untuk you tanya pada masa cross examination, tanyalah. Tetapi soalan cross examination tu bukan soalan untuk you bantu prosecution. Kalau misal kata saksi dia tak jawab, you kena ingat, you cross examine ni adalah saksi orang lain. you must cross-examine saksi orang lain ini untuk benefit of you, bukan benefit untuk orang lain. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, this is very important yang mana dia tak ada dalam buku-buku lah ya, dia berdasarkan kepada pengalaman. Alright, these are miscellaneous matter yang you kena lihat. Contoh section 395 adalah bagaimana keterangan yang boleh diberikan oleh seseorang yang memang sakit. Contoh ada sekarang ni tengah kes COVID-19. COVID-19 which is dangerously ill. Tetapi dia kena memberikan keterangan. Kalau misal kata dia bukan merupakan online, dia kena face to face. So keterangan dia boleh diberikan secara macam mana? Section 395 mengatakan bahawa dia boleh memberikan keterangan secara apa di bawah section 395? Cuba tengok section 395. Okay, keterangan daripada orang yang dangerously ill. Macam mana prosedur dia? Prosedur dia adalah, if it is not practicable to take his evidence according to the usual course of the law, the said judge may take the deposition of that person provided such reasonable notice as the case admit. Maksudnya, boleh diterima keterangan secara bersumpah ataupun bertulis. Ya, keterangan bersumpah secara bertulis daripada saksi-saksi yang sakit tersebut. Okay, but you must remember the requirement must be fulfilled. Maksudnya notis kepada pihak-pihak perlulah diberikan, terutamanya kepada saksi yang memang sakit yang tidak boleh memberikan keterangan ini. Okay. Subsection 3, when it is proved at the trial of the said accused for any offence to which that deposition relate to the deponent is that, or that for any sufficient cause his attendance cannot be procured, the deposition may be read either for or against the accused notwithstanding his absence when the same was taken. Maksudnya, katalah, okay, ini juga famous dalam kes-kes melibatkan inquest. Inquest ni adalah kes-kes siasatan kematian secara mengejut. Yang mana secara tiba-tiba adanya satu keterangan daripada pihak saksi, tapi saksi ini sudah mati atau tidak dapat ditemui berkaitan dengan pengakuan dia. Dialah yang melihat OKT ini yang melakukan kesalahan tersebut. Okey, tapi dia tidak boleh hadir oleh sebab dia telah mati, dia tidak dapat dicari ya. Presumption of orang hilang. You pernah dengar tak orang hilang? Presumption of a missing person. Okey, adalah di mana orang tersebut hendaklah dikategori disahkan sebagai tidak ada, maksudnya hilang. Bukan disahkan mati tau. Disahkan tidak dijumpai sekiranya dia dah cari dia dan dia tak dapat jumpa dia untuk tempoh berapa tahun? 6 ke 12 tahun?
7.
7 tahun. Yes, 7 tahun. You tak boleh jumpa dia selama 7 tahun. Tetapi dia ada menulis ataupun dia ada keterangan secara bersumpah. Dan keterangan tersebut boleh dibawa masuk berdasarkan kepada section 395. Okay. Kemudian section 396. Keterangan evidence of person not called as witness adalah di bawah section 396. Okay. 396. It can be recorded. Okay. That the person's evidence on oath. Kalau seseorang itu tidak dipanggil, itu di bawah section 396. 397 adalah deposition of medical witness. Ini dalam kes-kes melibatkan High Court sahaja, di mana medical witness tersebut telah pun keterangannya diambil oleh magistrate pada kes terdahulu. Maka court tak perlu memanggil dia sekali lagi untuk ke Mahkamah Tinggi memberikan keterangan. Court hanya boleh panggil dia punya keterangan bertulis, saksi-saksi perubatan tersebut. Kemudian section 399B adalah report daripada pihak expert berkaitan dengan organised criminal group, okay, ataupun kumpulan penjenayah terancang. Okay, so ini adalah di bawah section 399B, admissibility of expert. Boleh atau tidak kalau misal kata nak buat masuk keterangan berkaitan dengan sabitan terdahulu OKT? Jawapannya adalah boleh di bawah section 400, di bawah section 400, previous conviction. Okay, previous conviction. Okay. Lepas tu section 402 alibi. Alibi ni adalah pihak OKT. Dia nak mengukakan keterangan bahawa dia tidak ada di tempat kejadian pada masa itu. Tetapi dia perlu memenuhi syarat-syarat sebagaimana di bawah section 402 dan juga ada borang yang dia kena isi ya berkaitan. Okay. Lepas tu cuba lihat section 402B, 402C. 402B adalah proof of written statement. Proof of written statement. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan proof of written statement? You nak bawa masuk keterangan-keterangan secara bertulis. Secara bertulis. A statement may be tendered in evidence under subsection 1. Okay. If, okay, syarat-syarat keterangan bertulis yang nak dia bawa masuk sebagai keterangan, whether it is admissible or not, it must fulfill the requirement under subsection 2. The statement purport to be signed by the person who made it. The statement contain a declaration by that person to the effect that it is true to the best of his knowledge and belief, and the copy of statement is served by or on behalf of the party proposing to tender it, or on each of the other parties to the proceeding not later than 14 days before the commencement. Okay, ingat untuk proof by written statement 14 hari sebelum tarikh perbicaraan ia hendaklah disampaikan kepada pihak-pihak. Okay, kepada pihak-pihak. So this is very important in terms of proof of written statement. Okay. Kemudian section 402C. Sorry 402B tu dia macam sedikit panjang. Kalau lihat subsection okay, subsection 4 kepada section 402B. If a statement proposed to be tendered in evidence under subsection 1 is made by a person who cannot read, the statement shall be read and explained to him before he sign. Okay, this is very important. If it is referred to any document or object as an exhibit to be served on any other party to the proceeding under subsection 2C, okay, maknanya 14 hari itu, it shall be accompanied by the copy of that document and by a photograph of the object and such information as may be necessary in order to enable the party to whom it is served to inspect the document and the object. Maksudnya, kalau proof of written statement tersebut ada melibatkan gambar dan gambar bertulis, ia hendaklah disampaikan dalam tempoh 14 hari tersebut, ya, termasuk gambar-gambar tersebut. Okay, subsection 5. Notwithstanding that the statement of a person may be admissible as evident by virtue of this section, a party by whom or on whose behalf a copy of a statement was served may call the person making the statement to give additional evidence, okay, which may include matters which are not contained in the statement, and the maker of the statement shall attend the trial for cross-examination and re-examination if so requested. So which means, kalau ada additional statement, apart from that written statement, the party can be called to give additional evidence. Okay. Under subsection 6 of section 402B, so much of any statement as is admitted in evidence by virtue of this section shall, unless the court otherwise direct, be read aloud at the trial, and where the court so direct an account shall be given orally of so much of any statement is not read aloud. So meaning that kalau dia diterima, maka dia hendaklah dibacakan, dibacakan di dalam mahkamah terbuka, ya, dibacakan sekuatnya, to be read aloud. Okay, maksudnya dibacakan sehingga kedua-dua pihak tersebut mendengar, ya. Okay, cuba tengok berkaitan dokumen subsection 8. Subsection 8 ini adalah bagaimana you have to serve the document. By delivering the document to the person himself ataupun kepada peguam dia, dan kalau dokumen tersebut hendaklah diserahkan kepada pihak syarikat, by delivering the document to the secretary or other like officer of the corporation at its registered or principal office. Okay, sama ada melalui registered post ataupun secara penghantaran kepada pihak setiausaha perbadanan tersebut. Alright, section 402C adalah proof by formal admission. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan proof by formal admission? Subsection 1 mengatakan bahawa Any fact of which oral evidence may be given in any criminal trial may be admitted for the purpose of those proceeding by or on behalf of the public prosecutor or accused, and the admission by any party of any fact under this section shall against that party by conclusive evidence in those proceeding of the facts admitted. So ini adalah sesuatu yang mana dia boleh diterima secara formal. Okay. Formal admission kalau dapat lihat berdasarkan kepada subsection 2 sama ada secara writing oleh beliau yang perlu ditandatangani oleh beliau ataupun oleh kalau misal kata fakta itu ditulis di dalam mahkamah ataupun ia hendaklah ditandatangani oleh wakil kepada syarikat-syarikat tersebut kalau misal kata keterangan itu adalah keterangan yang diberikan oleh pihak syarikat, ataupun formal admission ini merupakan keterangan-keterangan yang ditulis bagi pihak OKT yang ditentu sahkan oleh pihak peguam, whether at the time it was made or subsequently before or during the proceeding in question. Itu di bawah section 402C subsection E. Okay. Alright, thank you very much. Is there any other question?
Ustaz, saya ada soalan. Sir,
Ya, saya.
yang untuk orang mati tadi tu, macam mana nak ambil evidence dia tadi tu, macam mana sir? Saya kurang jelas. Kalau dia dah mati.
Oh, itu bermakna bukanlah ketika dia mati. Itu maksudnya kalau misal kata terdapatnya keterangan yang mana beliau membuat pengakuan ataupun yang mana beliau menulis, sebab kadang-kadang orang yang membunuh diri ni dia ada dipanggil sebagai suicide note, nota bunuh diri, di mana dia menyatakan di situ apakah sebab-sebab yang mana beliau merasakan beliau terlalu kecewa dengan apa-apa yang mana beliau tulis sebelum beliau meninggal dunia. Okay. Jadi kalau nak diikutkan, adakah boleh diterima ataupun tidak? Can the court admit that particular evidence sebab orang itu telah pun meninggal dunia? So jawapannya adalah boleh. Kalau misal kata keterangan tersebut dibawa. Okay. Boleh keterangan tersebut dibawa berdasarkan kepada section berapa tadi? Atika? Ingat tak?
396 saya.
Section
395.
395. Okay. Maksudnya kalau beliau telah meninggal dunia, keterangan beliau masih diambil kira. Maksudnya boleh dibawa masuk. Keterangan yang beliau buat sebelum beliau meninggal dunia. Itu maksud dia. Okay. Maksudnya keterangan yang beliau tulis sebelum beliau meninggal dunia, boleh dibawa masuk ke mahkamah selepas beliau meninggal dunia. Berdasarkan kepada section 395. The evidence that has been adduced in writing by the deceased person can be admitted in court after the deceased person pass away. Okay, so that is what it meant under section 395. So 395 ni ada dua. Satu adalah if it is towards the dangerous ill witness. Contoh kan, beliau hidup semasa kes pendakwaan sedang berlangsung. Okay, beliau hidup ketika accused person tu ditangkap, contohlah kan, beliau hidup. Okay, dan keterangan beliau sempat dirakamkan ketika beliau berada di hospital. Tak kira lah oleh pihak doktor ke ataupun pihak sesiapa ya. Jadi kemudian beliau tidak boleh hadir ke mahkamah oleh sebab sama ada beliau dangerously ill, jadi tak boleh datang. Kan, kalau beliau terpaksa dekat ICU, koma, so beliau memang tak boleh datang untuk beri keterangan. Ataupun beliau COVID-19 ni kan, ataupun terkena mana-mana penyakit yang memang berbahaya, tak boleh datang ke mahkamah kerana SARS dan sebagainya kan. Boleh menyangkit ya. Ataupun beliau pada mulanya adalah cedera parah, sempat diambil keterangan, kemudian koma dan kemudian meninggal dunia. Dan apabila perbicaraan tersebut, keterangan beliau semasa beliau hidup itu boleh dibawa masuk. Okey, boleh Atika?
Boleh sir.
Alright, thank you Atika. Ada soalan-soalan lain? Is there any other question?
Tak ada, sir.
Tak ada. Oh, ingat Eliana Fatin ada nak tanya soalan tadi. Alright, okay. Thank you very much. Kalau tak ada apa-apa soalan, sampai di sini dahulu pertemuan kita. Okay. Apa ni? Okay, apa yang saya nak sampaikan lagi ya? Rasanya saya pun tak ada apa-apa ni. Jadi saya akan upload nota ini di dalam MS Teams untuk you punya further reading ya. So apa yang saya ajar ni adalah berkaitan dengan theory, okay, in which it is very important nanti pada masa you punya tutorial dengan practitioners, in which you need to know, okay, tendering exhibit ya. Tendering exhibit ni doktor dah ajar ke tidak tendering exhibit ni tadi dekat belah mana tendering exhibit ni tadi Tendering exhibit ni lah tadi yang saya nyatakan kalau contoh 395, 396, okay. Kalau contoh melibatkan keterangan saksi pakar, okay. Exhibit juga adalah merupakan keterangan. It is part of evidence, okay. So this is also very important. Ada soalan tak? Boleh? Betul tak ada soalan ni? Wah, ni kalau tak ada soalan ni memang dahsyat ni.
Boleh, sir.
Ni faham
Sir?
semua ni. Ya saya Ashraf.
Saya tak ada soalan berkenaan ni, tapi saya nak tanya, esok kelas esok jadi ke?
Oh, saya lupa nak bagi tahu. Kelas esok akan dijadualkan pada hari lain. Akan dijadualkan pada hari lain ya. Sebenarnya sebab pada Jumaat minggu depan, 2 kali Jumaat minggu depan kita tak akan bertemu. Ni akan buatkan saya rindu pada you all ni. Kita tak bertemu kerana cuti hari Christmas dan cuti tahun baru. Jadi kelas ini perlu diganti. Dan saya ingatkan saya nak ganti pada Sabtu ni, tapi saya pun lupa hari Sabtu ni saya ada clash dengan kelas lain. Jadi kalau saya nak buat kelas pada waktu malam hari boleh ke? Nanti saya tanya, silalah berikan respon kepada Ashraf nanti. Okay? Ashraf nanti bolehlah bertanya kepada kawan-kawan ya. Sama ada nak buat alternatively, kita terpaksa buat kelas malam. Kalau buat kelas malam pun tak lama 2 slot tu maknanya mungkin kalau hari Isnin malam tu mungkin dalam 2 jam, okay? Ataupun 1.5 jam. Dan kemudian katalah hari Isnin atau hari Rabu, contoh gitulah. Tapi terpulang pada you all, you nak buat pada hari apa. Dan just let me know ya. Ada 2 slot lah, 2 slot yang kita kena ganti. Okay? Boleh? Boleh Ashraf? Saya mohon maaf, saya terpaksa untuk mengganti kelas. Sebab kalau tidak nanti saya khawatir nanti kita tak dapat nak habis syllabus, nanti you all buat tutorial bersama practitioners, nanti topik itu tak di cover. Setakat untuk topik bersama dengan practitioners today, okay, berkaitan dengan witness examination dan tendering exhibit, kita dah cover. Okay, and for the next session, yang 2 lagi tajuk yang kita nak kena cover ni adalah berkaitan dengan preparing and making submission dan juga sentencing. Okay, sentencing. Maksudnya lagi 2 kelas ni preparing and making submission ni saya boleh buat dalam 1 jam, 1.5 jam. Okay. Dan satu lagi kelas tu dalam 2 jam lah sebab dia melibatkan sentencing. Okay. Dan saya akan release pada hari ini, insyaAllah petang nanti you punya projek nombor 2 untuk CPC, iaitu 15 markah. I need to be clear with you. The first task adalah you buat 2 infografik. 2 infografik daripada section 173A until O. 2 infografik tersebut adalah berjumlah 15 markah dan that is group assignment. Group project ya. Dan projek kedua ni adalah projek berkaitan dengan sentencing. Okay, berkaitan dengan sentencing, ia adalah 15 markah. Maknanya hanya ada 2 saja projek ataupun assignment yang saya berikan kepada you all, iaitu 2 infografik dan satu assignment bertulis berkaitan sentencing. Assignment berkaitan sentencing adalah individual assignment. Individual assignment, okay? Yang mana saya tak require all jawab banyak-banyak lah. Tak perlu tulis lah sampai 10 muka surat ya. Dia adalah short, sweet and concise ya. Tapi nanti saya akan bagi pada you tengoklah kepada apa dia punya format dan requirement dia. Okay. Yang lain-lain saya mohon maaf di atas segala kekurangan. Kalau misal kata tiba-tiba tertukar kelas ke dan sebagainya, saya mohon maaf banyak-banyak. Saya tak boleh nak elak. Ni terutamanya hari Isnin ni ada mesyuarat pentaksiran soalan peperiksaan yang akan diadakan pagi. So kemungkinan besar TLB 1, 2 dan 3 ADR di bawah saya, kemungkinan besar tidak ada face to face tutorial. Jangan takut, ia tidak akan diganti tetapi akan ada tugasan yang akan saya berikan. Okey, tetapi kalau lecture saya terpaksa ganti. Okey, boleh Ashraf? Nanti you bincang dalam sesama grup hari apa yang bersesuaian. Saya perlukan 2 slot. Okey, 2 slot. Okey, maksudnya lagi 3,5 jam atau lagi 4 jam lah. So ikut pada you. Hari apa you nak 2 jam. Okay, ataupun you nak buat 4 jam sekali pun tak apa. Contoh daripada pukul 6 sampai pukul 10 ke, contoh lah. Ni contoh ya. Okay, so nanti you bincang sesama dengan grup dengan Ashraf. Okay, ada soalan lain?
Sir, saya nak tanya.
Yang awal tadi tu saya kata ada infografik punya task tu. Dah kena submit ke madam? Sir?
Okey. Tiba-tiba saya jadi madam pula ni. Sekejap. Orang yang teringat madam ni, saya nak apa, okey. Okey, sekejap ya. Saya cuba tutup dulu slide saya ni. Okey. Okey. Dia bukan apa, dia tutup slide ni sebab nak apa, okey. Okey. Nak tunjuklah saya pakai baju Melayu hari ni. Okey. Infografik tersebut akan disubmit pada minggu hadapan. Okey, saya akan buka dalam MS Team pada hari pada hari Khamis atau Jumaat sebab dan memberi ruang kepada you all untuk memperkemas balik you all punya infografik task. Okey. Tapi you kena ingat ya, sebab you buat 2 infografik dalam satu, section 173A dengan O. Okey, maka you kena combinekan ataupun you boleh buat dalam separate file. Okay, hantar minggu hadapan hari Khamis. Ashraf, saya minta kalau saya terlupa, tolong maklumkan kepada saya untuk buka folder tu pada hari Khamis minggu depan. Okay. Apa lagi satu soalan? Itu je? Ada soalan lain?
Saya itu je. Lepas tu Alia tadi ada nak tanya soalan.
Alright, okay Alia. Nak tanya apa Alia?
Sir, saya terfikir, let's say lah, seorang witness ni kan, kita as lawyer, kita dah buat witness statement dia. Tiba sebelum trial dia meninggal. So macam mana sir? Boleh, dia memang tak boleh datang court kan, hearing. So admissible lah witness statement kita buat sebelum masa dia meninggal tu.
Witness statement yang dibuat semasa hayat dia. Okey, dia akan masuk di bawah section 395. Ia melibatkan katalah dia telah meninggal dunia. Okey. Oleh kerana dia tak dapat memberikan keterangan. So admissibility ni bergantung kepada bergantung kepada you kena buktikan bahawa satu dia telah tiada, meninggal dunia, dan yang keduanya di position dia tu telah diambil ya, berdasarkan kepada prosedur di bawah section 395 kalau misal kata dia mula-mula seriously ill dan kemudian meninggal dunia. Okey.
Kalau mati mengejut sir, sekali lah.
Sekali, dia sekali. Ya. Yeah.
Okay, thank you sir.
Okay, ada soalan lain? Ada soalan lain? Bolehlah tanya soalan kalau tak faham ya.
Sir.
Ya.
Sebenarnya saya tak faham yang section 400 tu bukan kalau dah convict pasti pas ke sir? Macam mana nak proof kan untuk new conviction ni? Kenapa?
Previous conviction ni adalah salah satu elemen untuk aggravated factor aggravated factor. Maksudnya dia nak bawa masuk keterangan di mana OKT ini pernah disabitkan terdahulu. Contohlah, kalau dahulu dia disabitkan atas kesalahan mencuri dan kemudian kes yang baru ni melibatkan kesalahan mencuri atau merompak. Okey. Jadi nak dibawa masuk keterangan bahawa beliau pernah disabitkan dengan kesalahan mencuri atau merompak di masa yang lalu bagi membuktikan bahawa beliau ini pernah disabitkan dengan kesalahan yang sama ataupun yang lebih kurang sama. Okey. Dan selalunya prosecution nak membawa masuk bukti bahawa previous conviction tu in order untuk membuktikan in terms of demeanor bahawa OKT ini masih mempunyai attitude ataupun perangai yang sama. Jangan kira double jeopardy, sebab double jeopardy bermaksud you tidak boleh disabitkan dengan kesalahan yang sama sebanyak 2 kali. Tapi ini melibatkan fakta yang berbeza. Okay, fakta yang berbeza, kemungkinan victim yang berbeza, tetapi mempunyai similarity. Contoh mencuri, mungkin di bawah pertuduhan section yang sama atau lebih kurang sama. So dia tidak dikategorikan sebagai double jeopardy. Dia nak menunjukkan bahawa OKT ni pernah disabitkan. So dia ada rekod lampau. Dia ada rekod kesalahan lampau, previous conviction record. Okay. So previous conviction record ini selalunya dibawa masuk untuk tujuan untuk tujuan aggravated factor. Okay, di mana mahkamah akan tanya sebelum jatuhkan hukuman dan sebelum sebelum menjatuhkan hukuman, mahkamah akan tanya pihak pendakwaan sama ada OKT ada atau tidak rekod kesalahan lampau. Dan kalau prosecution kata ada, maka dia akan menjadi aggravated. Maksudnya faktor pemberat untuk memberatkan hukuman. Okey. Itu maksud dia. Boleh Atika?
Boleh sir, faham.
Okey, terima kasih. Ada lagi yang nak bertanya? Silakan bertanya. Okey. Tak ada? Betul tak ada? Okey. Muktamad tak ada soalan? Alright. Okey. Kalau tak ada soalan, betul tak ada soalan? Okey. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Okey. Tak ada soalan. Okey. Maka tak ada soalan. Okey. Itu saja kita punya kuliah pada hari ini. Sebagaimana saya nyatakan tadi, kita tak ada kuliah pada minggu depan dan minggu lagi 1. 2 minggu kita tak jumpa. Jadi saya mengharapkan adalah tarikh yang nak dipersetujui oleh you all, bagi tahu pada Ashraf supaya nanti kita boleh buat kuliah gantian. Okay. So up until then, semoga bermanfaat. Jaga diri, jaga kesihatan. Okay. Ashraf, ada nak tanya lagi ke?
Tekan,
okay. Jaga diri, okay, jaga kesihatan. Semoga kita berjumpa lagi. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Take care ya. Bye bye.
Terima kasih. Salam.
Thank you doktor. Happy weekend. Salam. Terima kasih banyak doktor.
Thank you.
Sama. Happy weekend untuk you all juga.
Okay sir, thank you. Cantik baju biru sir.
Alright, thank you. JDT.